Hello, good day.
Hello.
Hey, Jess.
Hello. Good. Yep. It's
Hongchao, will you lead us, or is it just gonna be us four? It's 10:05.
uh like I don't think is there any topic today because I didn't see any thing on the agenda. Do we
9:07. I see things there.
oh really? Oh that's the 9/7, yeah. Um I see. Oh yeah, I saw the 9/21 like
Oh, yeah.
yep like I think maybe you can help just like host the meeting because like it's like will you do that, Josh?
Yeah, sure. Actually, just as you said that, some guys started doing work right next to me here. Yeah, I know that we have Bill Maxwell here to talk about Acorn. Even though we don't have a ton of folks here. Palacios, what's your first name? I keep forgetting.
It's Mike.
Mike. Okay.
There's too many Mikes where I work, so I just go by my last name.
Oh, I can call you Palacios. I just didn't want to say.
It's in this scenario. There's not a problem. It sounds like.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and Bill, like, even though it's just us, this will be posted up on YouTube afterwards. I'll take some notes here, and we'll create an issue too, if there's significant stuff, so that other people can review it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and kick that off, and then we can tackle a couple other things on the agenda after.
Sure, sounds good. Let me.
Taking notes here.
Is that coming through okay?
Yeah, I see it.
So just at a high level, Acorn's a platform for packaging applications to deploy onto Kubernetes clusters. We're really focusing more on the application layer and trying to minimize how much K8's experience and knowledge is needed to at least get started and get going. I think over time, as people evolve, they'll work better. But out of the box secure so that operators of the cluster can feel confident that developers that are deploying these applications, they're following a best practice. Basically putting some guardrails as apps go out to production there, but really focusing on that developer experience where we saw with Docker, people were able to get up and running quickly on their laptops, but then they transitioned to Kubernetes required a lot more, a whole new set of context to bring into the picture to deploy that application. Being able to do some validation and some testing. Ultimately, we want to get to the point where this is packaged, and then you can validate that it's packaged appropriately, passing unit tests, everything, integration type testing, and then really want to have the common artifact. So everything that gets packaged into an Acorn image, it's both the manifest and metadata on how you deploy that, plus all of the container images. So if you think about scenarios where you're trying to deploy in an air gap, current solutions sort of leave you, you have the like a Helm chart, for instance, and then you have to pull in all of the different images from all the registries and aggregate that yourself. This is the one artifact. You can sign it and secure it and say, this is the thing to deploy. I like to keep this interactive in such a small group. If you guys have questions, please stop me.
Yeah, like what artifacts are in there? Is it just Kubernetes manifests, or is it what kind of manifests?
So we have our Acorn file. Actually, this is good. So we have an Acorn file which describes the app. We use terms like sort of container, so similar to the Compose, sort of the Docker UX of you have a container. Here's the application. You have multiple apps and here's the ports that need to be exposed. Here's the volumes we're going to need. Here's the secrets that are going to be used. So we take all of that, and then so if you need to, we could build the Docker image there on the cluster, or we pull them from remote registries and but they all get bundled into one single OCI artifact. You push that artifact up to a registry, and then you can deploy it onto any cluster. With the build workflow, it doesn't necessarily, it has a registry that's put onto the cluster that's used for local builds and stuff like that.
Wait, what? So it actually deploys something that hosts a build?
Yeah. So in the cluster, I think, so there's an operator or controller, an API server, and then when you go Acorn build, we actually deploy a build kit container with a registry inside it, so that way you can build and deploy into that cluster without having to push it to a remote registry.
Okay. So I guess that's what you're saying. So there's an Acorn operator they have to install into the cluster, which sets up some of these like capabilities like build.
Yep. So we put an API server and there's a controller element that just basically watches custom resource and then does the right thing. So the nice thing about this is the end user's perspective, they're describing the application, that sort of containers and volumes and secret layer. And behind the scenes, we take all that information and we create the ingress and the services and the deployments and everything else that the user would have to do and map the PVC, just a nice UX on top of it, without requiring that upfront knowledge of, okay, here's the YAML for an ingress, here's the YAML for the service, here's the YAML for the deployment. So we're leveraging everything within the Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes, but trying to present it to the end user to kind of make it easier for them to onboard and get up and running quickly.
How do you determine like what kinds of routes and ports they might, does everything have to be declared by them, or do you do some inference?
No, everything's done in the Acorn file, and it's explicit. You can change some behavior at run, like you used to be able to do with Docker. So you can do Docker run -p and publish a port or something like that. So you can do that with Acorn as well. There's 3 layers the way that we sort of describe the network. There's internal to the Acorn. So if you're deploying a database with the same thing, that database doesn't necessarily need to be exposed outside of that context within the Acorn. Then there's expose, so that's sort of like a cluster wide, and then there's publish, which is either service load balancer or ingress, depending on HTTP or not. But yeah, I think I don't want to spend too much time in slides, but just at a high level, is this kind of making sense as far as what's happening and sort of the initial intro to it? So then let's take a look at a demo. Is this too small? Make it a little bigger. So this is just a little Python app that I've been, putting together. It's just Flask, nothing too fancy. It's just gonna echo and have a page to do. You say hi, and then it'll echo back. And then here's the Docker file for that. And just again, real simple. Set up a couple environment variables, move the source into it, do the pip install, and then expose the 5,000. But then, so that, you can do all of the normal Python things on your local laptop, but it's always nice to, mimic what would run in production. So if we start, this is where we start stepping in. So here is a very, very simple Acorn file for this. And what we're describing is the containers that'll run. The app container is going to get built. This looks, this is if you were to do a Docker build on the command line, very similar arguments. So you can context, you can tag, pass args if you need to build targets, but exposes that. Then here I'm saying the port is going to publish port 5,000. There's a built-in dev mode. And so I'll show that first. So like when you're working for that tight loop on a laptop, or you're making code changes, you want to see that reflected quickly. We have this dev mode, which will watch the local file system, sync the contents up to the container, and be able to run update that. So in this case, there's auto reloading, and so you'll be able to see the updates in real time.
Wow,
And that's
very interesting that you have an if statement. So this is not valid JSON.
No, this is that's a good point. So yeah, sorry, I forgot about this. This is written in AML, Acorn Markup Language. It's it's similar to YAML and JSON, but what's nice about it is it has these it has control structures. So you can do ifs, you can do merging of objects, you can do for loops. I think the other approach would be to do YAML plus a Go template, right? And so that, from our experience, that it works, but it's a bit challenging to author sometimes. It can get complicated, and then so we like this style. It was heavily inspired by Q, but it's its own thing. So yeah, it does have ifs, and if I wanted to, I could do like for loops and standard range. It has some built-in functions, which the way that we like, that gets into a whole other area. Let's stay on track. But yes, it does have control structure, so you can do ifs and you can do for loops, merges, and we've got some built-in functions that'll help you out. But it's all sort of one language and one sort of syntax to follow. I'm also declaring a second container. I'm not going to use it right away, but this is going to be the Redis one. This is just going to deploy the Redis image from the standard library, and here I'm just saying it's got port 6379. So it'll create a service for it, but it'll just be for the it won't be publishable or exposed.
Just
So
curious,
then,
since you have two containers, does it assume that they'll be in the same pod in Kubernetes?
No, if you can do that. In the container definition, there's a sidecars field, which then you can add more container specs. And then you can also do init containers that way.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so by default, each container is its own pod? Just to confirm.
Yeah, it actually, behind the scenes, it'll be its own deployment, which can be one or many. You can set a scale as well. So, but yeah, each one will be discrete. So then I can do an Acorn run minus I. And so this just gives me, what this is doing now is I'm running it. It's going to build the container, and then it's going to deploy it. as it comes up, Acorn is automatically assigning a DNS name to it. So I can just click on that and my app is up and running. And so, this is just real simple. Hi app. In the, let's say though, you wanted to show a history, of what's going on. Say I want to edit my templates in my index, and so I've commented this out, but this is just going to add a div to the page. You can see I save the file, and you can see on the left here that these things are, as I'm making changes, it's being synchronized. Apparently it picks up the swap file and said that. But now, I can say I have a history. It's keeping tabs on this. So, and all it's doing now is it's actually talking to the Redis container in the background and storing that, and then pulling it back up and sorting the keys. But you can see like it's really a nice tight loop. I'm editing, I'm making code changes, and let's say I'm happy with this now. I'm happy with this now. So then I can say, okay, let's stop that. And then I can say, okay, let's Acorn build. Let's log into the registry. That's it. Hopefully that's right. So now I can say Acorn build st cloud, you gotta do the full name. Docker.io cloud we'll do dash dash push. So here it'll build it, it'll publish it. Now I can take this to any cluster. Hopefully it's pushing. Yeah. So now you can see if I do Acorn images, I've got my new one there. And if I do -C, you can see now I've got closest. I've got my different containers. I got my app container, my Redis container. They're all connected together. And then I can do Acorn run index Docker.io cloud.geek. Go Acorn.
When this
No,
when
that'll
Acorn
run in the back.
images, and Acorn images is that's looking at your local repository, right? It's not like pulling in something from.
Yeah, it's looking at the local one. So I have that there, and then if I do images -C, that's the container. So it'll inspect the image and list out the containers. And as long as it's been published, I can then do something like Acorn images by CQ, like Trivy scan. I don't have to, if I had Trivy installed, that would work. But basically, you could dump the images to an image scanner and scan them periodically if you wanted to, or if needed to, just for security reasons. But Acorn all, so you can see here I've got my app is running. It's got 2 healthy containers. It's under this falling darkness. You can see that this one's running and this one's running. If we had volumes and secrets, it's worth noting though. So Redis is a stateful application. So I could say Acorn volumes, and then say Redis data. I can say there's data. What that'll do is if I do Acorn. It's always when you go off script.
Oh. I don't want to disrupt you, but I have a question about this. I can ask. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone- What what would happen if, like, let's say I had databases and caches and things like that as services in my cluster already, and I just wanted to leverage those with, say, a CRD? Like, these are all just containerized Redis, and that fits like Docker Compose, but like, what if I want to use like operator-based services and stuff?
That's a great question. So two things. If you have another app that's deployed as an Acorn, so you had like a Redis Acorn, you can just link them. So you would do Acorn run -l already installed Redis :Redis, and then that would just, we wouldn't deploy the Redis container. We would just say, okay, we'll create a service that maps to the Redis endpoint. And then at that point, you can also say, here's the credential, or you can push a credential. There's a couple of different ways to do it, but it's also a way to manage sort of the way the secret flows through there. So if you needed a credential for that database, that's also possible.
That's cool. Yeah. I always thought about that.
We haven't done it yet, but the other thing is, operators, or if you're using RDS or just like a cloud-based service, what we're going to do is allow you to create just basically like a DNS entry and then link that in. So we'll create a service that allows you to link it in, and then it'll do the right thing. The way that, the other piece to that is typically the credential bits. So you can declare secrets as well, and you can say, DB creds. Basic, which says you're going to have data, username, and password. So what's going to happen in this case is, since it's undefined, when in a development scenario, let's say Acorn will look at that and then generate a random username and password. What you can do is then reference that here in like an end of, you can say,
from the secret
password is
secret. Nice. Yeah, like what I think when I see this is, hey, if I had an operator which always wrote down a secret at a a conventional secret name, then yeah, I could put that in the end here, and I guess it wouldn't be a container. It sounds like you're saying services are like a reverse proxy that you inject. So
yeah, I think so. There's just standard Kubernetes services, and so we'll map them and do the right thing. And then I think we do some magic for certain types of services, but I'd have to unpack that a bit more. But
cool.
Actually, yeah. So if if your operator created a secret and you knew the structure of that secret, it'll have these keys in the data field. You would define it here either as a opaque or whatever you want. But then when you go to run it, you do Acorn run -s existing secret, and then you bind it over the DB creds. And so what that does is, instead of us generating it, we'll use the existing secret and then map that in. And as long as the keys in the data field map up, we'll just automatically put the right stuff where it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
I think so. You see the Q stuff in there.
Yeah, we're working on getting it. We originally started with Q, and we've sort of moved down this path of our own. So we're working on, I think the next release we'll have, we're targeting to get the AML bits, the actual parser and everything for AML. So we leveraged Q heavily to get it, the initial batch. I don't know why. Oh.
We won't
not
hold
plural.
ad hoc demo failures against you, don't worry.
Yeah. So then now
Um,
that's building, yeah.
Yeah, how actually that's my next question. How are you doing this build? Is this build packs? Is this something? What is this?
So we've created a build kit container inside the cluster that's been deployed. And so then we basically just use build kit to do all of the build. We pack up everything from the local and in the context that's defined by the user, and then we stick that into the container. I think now if I do split plane vertically, so you can see here, as I do Acorn all. So you can see now I'm creating this volume that would get mounted. It's bound to the Redis. It's bound and it's called Redis data. And it's part of this application. I generated the DB cred secret, and so now I can do Acorn. So if I needed them, I can get the generated ones. But just sort of randomly generated. And if I go into the Redis container and I printed the environment, you would see that it's there. So you can define it once, share it between the two different containers, and it would be up and running there.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Is there any way to add hooks, by the way? Because I saw you piped Acorn images to Trivy. Could I have somehow hooked Trivy in the build process?
Not yet, but that's a good idea. I like we're working out sort of the flow of what would be an easy path to deployment. So when it comes to run, I think you can do an Acorn run. So but anyway, you can get the output, which will give you the custom resource, which you could then put into like a Flux and sort of integrate into your existing CI/CD flows today. We're working on something that would make it a bit more native, where you can commit from a developer standpoint. They can commit just the Acorn file, and then they never have to do the translation to the Kubernetes manifest, even though that's what's happening under the hood. But just kind of keeping that flow nice and consistent for the end user and the developer in particular. We're going to continue to expand. You mentioned operators, so we're looking at the way, like the best way to sort of make that expose some of those capabilities. So you could deploy an operator driven database or something like that, a stateful service. And then how do we plug that in a nice way? So we're looking at expanding some of these things. But it's just going to take us a bit of time, as most projects do.
Nice. I do you have any comparisons? Like there are a couple projects that are similar to this. Have you analyzed any other projects or anything like that? I mean, I put a couple in the notes. I can bring them up, but
yeah, I mean, like I think we get compared to how are we different than a Helm chart pretty frequently. And the key thing there is to author a Helm chart. You have to be versed in Kubernetes YAML in order to be able to author that from scratch. Although most people don't these days, but still, I think that's a barrier sometimes for.
Saying like a values.yaml would be like an Acorn file is kind of similar.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the concept of you can pass in arguments, and then we have the concept of profiles even, so you can set the different defaults for those environments, so for those arguments. So if you've got like dev test prod, here's the fields that need to be filled out, and those would be sane defaults. We're sort of kicking around the idea of having a deployment file specific to the deployment and less the Acorn, where you would basically say, to deploy this application, you have this Acorn, and this Acorn. Here's the secrets, here's the values, and be able to sort of declaratively state that whole deployment in one place. Especially if you want to be able to do, as we were talking, you got a database Acorn or another Acorn, or however it works. But basically giving you a way to describe essentially similar to what you're driving with like a values.yaml per environment. You do I think it's common pattern, or to either do like a customize or different values files. So we've seen both, but the other thing is I think we've integrated a few tools to accommodate a couple different workflows. So there's a few in the space of being able to do the development lifecycle on top of or on the laptop with a Kubernetes cluster like a Tilt or something like that. We've got that, but then ultimately we end up packaging the whole artifact and shipping that and moving it through production. We're not just focused on the one use case where it's development centric.
Okay. I put in a couple other ones. I mean, I know the idea of bundling up all this stuff into a OCI image, that the idea, have you heard of CNAB? I just wanted to bring these up just in case.
Yeah. Yes, I've heard of it. I'm personally less familiar with that one. But I think it's similar in concept. I think again, though, the piece here is not needing the Kubernetes knowledge to be able to create those bundles, be able to describe what that application, that package looks like. But yeah,
I'll take your word for it. I know that they have a project called Porter, so I don't, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
how
I said,
actually
I
that-
can't speak authoritatively on it, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. The other big one that I've seen come through is Catch, which is even more similar, I feel like, to yours, which is Shippa, is the commercial entity behind it, SHIPA. And they don't have their own file. I'm not supposed to make kings, but you have a little bit. It looks like a little more thought in your in the Acorn file and stuff, but it's a more like Heroku kind of manifest. Like it just says, what did the Heroku stuff used to say, like web : this and worker : this is like 2 files or something, two lines. And then it tries to infer lots of stuff and do build pack builds and deployments. So there might be something there similar to. I put them in the notes if you want to check it out.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one, so I'll have to take a look.
Kubevela might be also kind of in the same vein, perhaps.
Yeah, they're queue driven, I believe, is sort of one of their big.
Yep.
Yeah, we ran into them, not ran into them, but yeah, we were looking at queue and different things. We definitely came across them.
Cool. Yeah, I was curious. As more coming from the operator side, do you all plan to do something where, I'm assuming there's custom resources behind there that says container equals deploy? I'm oversimplifying probably, but is there somewhere in that space where you think there would be a place for an operator to inform and say, like, okay, anytime I see a container, let's say I'm going to add these labels or something like that, I got to pull these elements and create labels or do things to kind of standardize, but still hide that from the user?
Yeah, we're thinking about a way to do sort of a plugin system so that we could basically do what you're describing, so that from both a policy side of things and also like it might be a way to add monitoring or something like that without having the end user have to be very much aware of like, oh, you need this monitor and this annotation and this label. It's like, well, what is that? So yeah, so we are looking at ways to do that. That's on our roadmap, but basically being able to extend and have some of those capabilities, whether it's sort of similar to like an admission controller or a mutating webhook would look like, or something else. But we're thinking about that for sure.
Very cool. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
That will help a lot of people get started with Acorn. All right. So moving down the agenda here, feel free to stay, Bill. We're happy. Happy to have you. We were going to talk about, well, I put this on the agenda, but I don't know if we have the right people to talk about it. KubeCon Detroit plans, Hong Chow, I don't know if you know anything about it. Thomas had been looking into it, so.
Yeah, I think Thomas and they have a talk for that. Like personally, I didn't, yeah, because due to the time zone, I wouldn't attend. I normally just attend the China one. Yeah. But
Did you do anything for Tag App Delivery at the China one?
yeah, definitely. Like last time I talked with Thomas, we co-speak at the Chinese
Oh yeah,
event.
talked about our thing. Did you have a booth there?
No, it's online. So
Okay, right. I
Yeah,
remember
online.
we contributed so that was all we did there. Okay. Okay, so I guess, I will, I gotta follow up with Thomas, because if we're gonna do something, we gotta do it now. We gotta get going. Okay, moving to the next multi-tenancy white paper. I don't have any updates on that. Alex is kind of the lead on that, so I'll leave that. And then the cooperative delivery article, I'll just bring it up. I posted that in our chat just to kind of asynchronously talk. We started the cooperative delivery working group last, I guess, November or so. It hasn't really gotten that much traction. So we're trying to, we want to publish something, maybe to help get traction, or maybe to fold it back into this mainstream conversation. There's not much point in me and one or two other people that are here anyway having a separate group for that. So that's kind of the impetus for writing up that article, to kind of share where we are, maybe bring a few more people, and then maybe reabsorb it into this main discussion. I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff today, like even what Bill was sharing, is kind of about how do you, I ask about coordinating infrastructure, that might be part of it, but yeah. So I guess I'm just bringing that up so we can, if anyone wants to talk about it here. And then the one other, I guess I put down some thoughts there about the article. That was just a first draft. One is platforms. It's, how do platforms fit in Tag App Delivery, in our landscape, which we're trying to rationalize a little bit. So I thought this was an opportunity to kind of ask people for opinions on that, try to develop an opinion on that, on where we think this fits and what platform engineering means. And yeah, so I'm kind of taking that cooperative delivery article and using it to kind of, I don't know, start that kind of conversation.
I know we're in the process of investigating options for how do we're driving people towards Helm right now. How do we try and it's a lot of disjointed activities that a developer needs to do in order to get all the different things that they need to deploy their app. So if they need something in Azure, a storage account, and then they need a Postgres database, and then they need to write their Helm chart to deploy the app, but then they need to get the secret out of a key vault and all the, then they have to do all these things in a disjointed way. We're looking at like Terraform controllers that could go and spin up that infrastructure and spit out that secret in a way that they can consume that all via their Helm chart, and they have their Terraform sitting somewhere calling a module that either an operator has created or whatnot, but trying to simplify that aspect of like, hey, Kubernetes isn't going to contain everything today where we work that they need to deploy their app, but how do we make it so they could describe that all in Kubernetes? So we're really early on in that journey, and we've seen examples of what looks like other folks have tackled with that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we can get that all functioning.
I think that's exactly where that cooperative delivery is thinking about. I mean, I wrote down what you said there, but it's about like beyond containers, we have all of these services and how do we integrate them well? So you're saying your Terraform controller with a kind of a declarative Helm chart that guides it.
And probably custom resources that say, okay, I need to create a storage account. So then the Terraform controller knows that it's got to do that for them and then return the secrets. And on the Helm side, we can kind of templatize that for them a little bit so they can expect like, okay, their storage account secrets will look like this. So reference them this way in your Helm chart.
Yeah. And you're using Terraform as a coordinator, and I guess you've developed your own kind of pattern for that, which.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're working towards that. Yeah. Slowly
How
iterating.
would you see that? Yeah, this makes sense. And how would like, is that a platform? The platform is like all of those pieces that you're bringing together with this.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I think that's where it gets hairy, is because we're like, I'm on a team that's focused mainly on the Kubernetes side, but that's kind of expanding out into like, okay, well, we're getting into the Azure resource side and the Terraform side. So the platform feels like it shouldn't just be Kubernetes, although Kubernetes is kind of that entry point into all those things. The platform is all of it, I think. Yeah. That those integrations into, or you say integrations into other platforms, perhaps you could argue that.
But you're using Terraform, a Kubernetes Terraform controller to kind of coordinate the entire platform.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I'm not like, I was asking because is platform like the answer to the coordination, and what I'm hearing from you is it's like it's part of it. I don't know if it's the answer, but it contributes to it.
Yeah, it's still a very hard problem to solve. And we have pretty sharp people that are tackling different aspects, but we're finding like, hey, it continues to extend into a lot of other teams and a lot of people's areas. Is how do we unify that view? So that's to me what makes it feels like a platform is like, okay, I'm taking something and unifying it so that somebody can tackle that thing, in a certain prescribed way to get the end result that they're getting. So yeah, like generically defining platform that way, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for this chat.
I'm not sure if it's helpful, but I know it's one way that we're tackling the problem.
Yeah, no, I think it's helpful to come to common understandings and try to establish some common terms and ideas. That's the idea. Okay, so I guess my feedback here is I'll iterate on that doc. If anyone wants to, write something in, I think it's open to comment to anyone. If you want to be an editor, just send me a request and you can do whatever you want. And we'll go from there.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
And I do have some potato head stuff that I've been meaning to contribute. The Ingress resource is outdated now that they've deprecated extensions beta. So if somebody tried to use the Ingress, it won't, at least I haven't actually looked at other places other than the Helm chart, but yeah, we would have to bump that up. So I do have like a branch working on that I need to put a pull request in for.
Awesome. Thank you. Actually, I meant to ask Bill if he could do an Acorn example in there.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool if he could do that. He has it as an example, but it doesn't have potato head. So if he could
exactly.
Make it a potato head example, it'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask him after this, actually.
Good deal.
Okay.
Are you all
Thank you.
going to the KubeCon in Detroit?
Good question. I'm trying to figure it out. That's why I kind of want to know what the plans are for the tag. It's not far from where I live. I guess it's not far from you either, Glasses.
Yeah, it's a what 5-hour drive or something like that. But I have obligations, so I won't be able to make it to that KubeCon. But hopefully, maybe the next one. Maybe I'll do the virtual.
What about you, Hong Chao? Are you coming over here?
No, it's too far away for me now. Yeah. But actually, I attended the very first KubeCon, like when I was in CoS. It was free. Like I just entered, like no one stopped me.
That was really
The
nice.
first one. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You need to have that T-shirt framed or something if they gave one.
Yeah, because like my company course was the sponsor and I know a lot of like people are attending at that time. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Cool.
All right. Thanks a lot. I guess see you on Slack and
Yep.
elsewhere.
Thanks. See y'all. Have a great one.
Yeah.
Bye.